Hey there, and welcome to the fourth installment of 5 on It News. This is a daily video news blog that is meant to condense the most globally impacting stories into an easily understood way, give them over to you. My name is Edwin Leskin. I am from Asheville, North Carolina. Took a little break over the weekend, had some audio problems with the microphone on my computer, and I also, there was the holiday, Valentine's Day on Saturday, and had a lot of stuff going on that day. So we're back to it. There's a ton of news that I want to get to today. I just want to say one more time, thank you everyone for the feedback. There's some new alterations to the way that the show is being done because of it, including a new little thing that I'll do at the end. But there's so much stuff, I just want to get right into it. I feel like I'm going to talk way over, but let's go for it. So starting off, we're going to start with our quick mentions. Quick mentions are where I come through and just, stack and knock out a bunch of stories that I want you to know about. I think they're interesting. They're not my primary focuses of the day, but they're good stuff. So let's check it out. We've been staying up on Ukraine. There was a ceasefire that was supposed to go into effect yesterday. There were these talks. The potentially Russian-backed rebels and the Ukrainian military forces have been fighting for so long. So there was supposed to be a ceasefire. It did not hold. The rebels said, hey, we have absolutely no intention of not attacking this town called Debaltseve, I believe. They've been trying to take it for all of January, so they're not going to back off. And then, of course, Ukraine said, okay, well, now there's no question at the moment. We're not withdrawing our heavy weapons. Fighting is still going on. So that just didn't hold. We'll see how that goes. That sucks. I was hoping for that one. Okay, so let's move on. We'll talk about drones a little bit. The FAA in the United States has proposed rules for flying drones and says no night flights. It says no drones over 500 feet. It says you got to see the drone, the person that's operating it, and it can't go over 100 miles an hour. This is just interesting to me because, I was waiting for some rules to come out like this. Pretty much a kick in the face, in my opinion, to what Amazon wants to do, which is just send little quadcopter robots all over the country delivering packages to your doorstep, which is a little strange. So we'll see how this interplay goes. I think there's going to be a strong rebuke from Amazon. Okay, so let's move on. I want to talk about UFOs for a minute. Recently departed White House advisor John Podesta has been obsessed with UFOs since he was a kid. Well, he left the White House, and he says the one regret that he has is that he didn't secure the disclosure of the UFO files that we have now. There was some leaking of a lot of files recently from some sort of military personnel a couple months ago, I believe, or a couple weeks ago even, I'm not sure. But it was very interesting. I remember reading it. There was this guy that said, look, this isn't disclosed to the public because, truthfully, the technology that we may or may not have interacted with during these engagements or non-engagements, leaving it very open, really wasn't all that impressive. It's not going to change the paradigm. So we'll see. Maybe this is technology that we already have that is still in testing by the military or something. Who knows? I know that I would like to have some confirmation if there are the potential for alien civilizations to interact with the the planet Earth, and also maybe they could be used as a model of the way you're supposed to run society and things. Sounds ridiculous, but I know a lot of you have strong opinions about that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to bring it up. I think it's interesting. So we'll move on to Turkey now. There was a murder last Wednesday, I believe, of a young woman. She's 20 years old. She's tortured and murdered. And it turned around to this massive nationwide protest where Turkish women and activists took to the streets in mass, and they had a really cool campaign on Twitter where they said, send in a lot, or send your story, tell your story. And basically, it's all these people that are involved in these protests saying, hey, here's an instance of where I was abused publicly or privately, whatever. Here's an instance where I was harassed. I think that's really interesting. I think that it's really good when you see protest communities not just raising up and saying, we're in solidarity with each other, but an active campaign to really get it out there and get in the faces of people of just look at what's going on. Look at how bad this is. So that's a really interesting, cool thing, and I hope the women of Turkey are able to affect some sociological reform in their country one way or another. It's already making a splash out here, it seems. So let's move on. We're going to talk about Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka and India have signed a nuclear deal nuclear safety deal. Now, this is interesting just because China had been talking to New Delhi about, maybe doing deals and stuff like this. But I think it's cool. This was the first trip that the new Indian prime minister had. He went right down to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is right next to India. And, there's a little bit of tension going on because China was coming in. But he said, no, I'm really going to prioritize Sri Lanka. We're going to go through. We're going to sign the safety deal, put out China a little bit. It's good stuff. It's very interesting. I'll try to get more news from, kind of the Western Asian parts of the world going on. It's just that a lot of stuff about India, such a big country, is very localized within itself. But when it connects another country, that's when I'll report on it. Okay, so moving on, I want to talk about Denmark. There was a fairly horrific shooting that went on at a Copenhagen synagogue. It was an event promoting free speech. Maybe, there was some inspiration from the recent Paris attacks and Charlie Hebdo. But this gunman came in. He's 22 years old. He killed 2 people. The cops found him. They shot him dead. 2 people have also been involved in it. My heart goes out to the Denmark people. As more countries we see this violence fractaling out into by proxy, one way or another. Whether he was directly linked to militants, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't even think we know that yet. But at the same time, he had a criminal record, a violent man, and obviously inspired by some of the worst stuff going on in the world. So that's really, really rough. They do not believe that he is trained in jihadist camps or anything. But that's rough stuff. So my heart goes out to those people, as I said. I want to move on. I want to talk about cybercrime. We're talking about cybersecurity. We're talking about how Obama was going out to the West Coast to meet with CEOs in Silicon Valley, saying, "Hey, everyone, share all of your security stuff." Well, this Russian firm, Kaspersky Lab, a security company, said that they had found evidence that these cybercrime robbers, these kind of gangs of cyber hackers that steal stuff, had stolen up to $1 billion from 100 major banks in 30 countries over the past 2 years. I think that's fascinating. As this new terrain of the internet becomes more and more malleable, and we see people making real entry into crime or into security or into the way that it works, we see this kind of another world start to develop and flesh out. I'm going to stay up on this stuff. Really, no sector is immune. What they found, $7.3 million to ATM fraud, or $10 million coming from an online banking platform. These guys know what they're doing. They're getting the money, and I'm just very interested to see what kind of the world response will be. They're saying that no sector can completely immune itself. Wow, that's amazing. I will stay up on cybersecurity. I will stay up on that stuff. I do think it affects you. That's why I'm talking about it. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Africa. We've been talking about Boko Haram, the militant group, mostly in Nigeria, and how they've been drawing in more nations, to their conflict by creating all these problems. They attacked a northern city called Gombe, and they say, hey, if you're Muslim, don't go to the voting polls. We're going to attack those voting polls. So I'm just going to stay up on this because we saw Chad getting involved. We have Niger, Nigeria, Chad. We have all these, actual soldiers that have been deployed and stuff. So now there's this fighting. This town has been attacked multiple times. There was a suicide blast that killed 20 last December, this town of Gombe. So I'm going to stay up on this. It's heating up over there, and I want to see where it goes. I want you to know where it goes. We're going to talk a little bit about South Sudan. I talked about South Sudan recently, and there's this conflict going on between rebels and the government, basically. And there is some evidence looking like the HRW, the Human Rights Watch, is saying, hey, both sides we think are recruiting children, definitely the rebels by force. Wow, that's really, really rough. Whenever child soldiers are used, there's the chance of losing a whole generation. Nothing could be more sad for a social space than losing a generation of young men. That's horrible. So I want to move on. As you've noticed, I like to do little stories where it's like, hey, kick you in the face, ISIS, kick you in the shin, slap you around, just little stuff. It makes me happy. I am not, shy about my bias that this is, a horrifying group that needs to be put to rest. And, yeah. So let's talk about it. There's a German rapper who became a grisly poster boy for ISIS. His name is Deso Dog, I think. And he happened to fall for the oldest trick in the book from the FBI, the oldest espionage trick, the honeypot, where an agent goes in and forms a romantic relationship with their target and then gains information or surveils them or does something. He fell to it. So good for the FBI, whoever carried out that thing. You're stupid, ISIS people. I don't like you. Okay, moving on. We're going to talk a little bit about ISIS's funding. I just think it's interesting. When we were looking at Al-Qaeda, we were thinking about, okay, so it's just drug trade and it's just the oil stuff, oil revenue. Well, I'm going to try to find out more about ISIS's funding, but there was an article that was released today at Fox, and they get a lot of donations, but they have a significant black market program. And I just think it's interesting. They're out there, they're selling weapons, they're probably selling drugs, and they even doing things like taking tax dollars from government employees in the areas that they've conquered and stuff like that. So they have a very rich black market method of trying to get the money. They tout how much money they have, and it's important for what they're doing, of course, to amass funds. I'm going to try to stay up on that and get a little bit deeper. I think that things like that, where funding comes from, they can end up illustrating a deeper and broader perspective on a situation or a certain group or stuff at large. So let's move on. I want to talk about the biggest thing for today that I'm going to talk about. Those are the quick mentions. Let's talk about Egypt and what went on with ISIS. There was a video that came out, I believe, yesterday where 21 Egyptian Christians, I believe that they were seized in Libya, were killed, were all beheaded on the same video. 21 Egyptian Christians. Egypt was extraordinarily upset, obviously. This is, a horrific slaughter. I mean, just imagine we just had one of our aid workers die. That was a U.S. citizen. Imagine if 21 U.S. citizens died tomorrow. Well, Egypt is retaliating hugely. The Pope even came out to denounce. I think it's interesting when different groups come out and really denounce, this group ISIS. But, Egypt retaliated with all these airstrikes, hitting training camps, weapon depots, military, installments and stuff like this. So this is, kind of a story it's horrible, it's horrific, and it provokes another response. But I think that it's interesting to, look at this story just because ISIS, what are they doing? What are they doing? They pissed off Jordan so bad. Jordan came in, thrashing. It still is. And they've made a tremendous number of nations very nervous. Also, the West, the way the violence is fractaling out into the West, it's really heating people up, making people mad. We have Egypt now, stepping it way up with their airstrikes. So what is ISIS doing? They're fomenting all of this negative energy towards them and all of this military attention. And I just don't see how it's a good plan. I think that on the ground, their military structure and what they do, to capture towns and stuff seems to be actually pretty effective. But overall, the way that the group is conducting itself at large, I don't know if there's like certain, standards for, doing these mass killings or promoting them and stuff like this, or what the overall objective is. I don't know if there is a unified objective. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Maybe I'll find out over time. But I just don't see how it's beneficial. I don't see how it's beneficial for ISIS to really embroil and really enrage so many nations. I mean, we've even had speculative articles and pundits coming out talking about, look, Iran's super freaked out. What if Iran goes to war and we go to war? The Iranian government, the U.S. government fighting the same enemy in a foreign nation. I mean, this is bridging, divides the amount of hatred and the amount of concern about what's going on with ISIS, the amount of, vengeance that is being sought. It is bridging divides. It's bringing together a lot of nations in a military fashion. So I don't know. I don't know what their end goal is. I don't know if this is just, hey, this is how we're going to operate. We're going to behead these people. This is, maybe they're so blinded into this is how we do things. Or maybe there's a larger strategy. We'll see. But it just doesn't seem like a good idea to me. Okay, so that was the news for today. I did a little speculation at the end, about what's going on, to some of my thoughts. This week, we're going to get into some other stuff at the end of each video segment. And, I wanted to talk about some international relations, political theory. We might be able to talk a little bit about stuff like that. I hope so. At some point this week, I'm going to try to squeeze in cool stuff at the end of, each video that's interesting for you to look at, that gives a little bit of, maybe a little background. Like today we were talking about a little speculation, or, is directly educational or something like that. And I want to let everybody know that I am going to be, different amounts of people are seeing this video. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 100. There's only been 4 of them. Over time, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be searching for a lot of feedback. I want to get the format down. A couple of weeks from now, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm all good. But I'm probably going to monetize the videos. I'm letting you know this because I like to be a transparent person. And then I'm going to use my personal skills as a social media creative social media expert to really blast this out there and try to get a lot of people looking at it. And the reason for that is just because I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, yo, I really think this has legs on it. I really think that more people could look at this. I'm turning my friends onto it. We watch it together at nighttime. Keep it up. We like what's going on. And please keep on giving me feedback. I want to know, so I want to perfect the format of the video for right now while it's super lo-fi and while I'm just doing this. Maybe a couple of weeks from now I can step up the quality, get a new webcam or something, and basically it's just taking up to an hour, maybe sometimes an hour and a half of my day. So that's why I'm going to monetize the videos, so that there's a little bit of recuperation for the time that's going into this. It is a service, but it's also really, really fun for me. Speaking of fun, I want to mention, I did get some response. Like, I got some feedback that changed the quick mentions to the front of the videos. That's been great. I think that's going to keep it up. If you like it that way, let me know. But I got some response. Somebody was like, hey, can you start out with something like fun, something that's nice, something that makes us feel good, and then get into all the hard stuff. Well, unfortunately, you can totally look up stuff like that. I encourage you to look up the cool stuff going on in the world. I am going to be focusing on, hey, does this impact your life? Is this really just really interesting to me, or does this connect two nations? Or does this affect the global geopolitical spectrum Anyway, and that's what I'll be reporting on. It's going to be a lot of hard stuff. I am conflict focused, obviously. This is coming from an international relations kind of perspective. I'm conflict focused, so we're going to, look at the kind of fracture points where things are falling apart and coming back together in clashes, across the world. That's going to be the primary focus. So no super happy videos at the beginning. I'm going to try to keep it fun. I'm going to try to keep it a little entertaining each day. At least just keep you engaged, keep my energy high. I think it's good for the videos. I think that it's going to be a staple part of 5 on It News. And just to close out, we're almost at 15 minutes. I expected today would be long. I also want to mention that I'm thinking about doing a couple other kinds of videos. So I've got a good friend. He's a very cool guy. His name's Neil. And I had the idea of, hey, Neil, maybe me and Neil can do like a show where we're both talking and we really give some historical background. He's like a super history like whiz. So give historical background to a certain subject. I'm thinking about that, and then it came to my mind, hey, why don't I do some other videos? Like once a month, why isn't there, or once a week, why isn't there another video on just something completely different? Like I've thrown a music festival the past couple years. Music festival news, or music industry news, or whatever, or this is kind of historical thing. I want to be trying to come up with some other ideas that are like special editions of 5 on It News, and get into some other types of videos that just happen sporadically that can kind of diversify the content. But once again, I really appreciate, all the feedback. Give me more of it. Let's figure out how to do this perfectly. Mastermind time with you. We can do it together. So please like, share, favorite, subscribe. There's the Facebook link in the comments. I really would love more people to see this. Like I said, I'll be blasting it harder, just so I can get more feedback before I really do blast it harder. So, let your friends know about it. More and more people are hitting me up saying, yo, I dig that. And I dig that you're letting me know. So let's keep the conversation flowing. And, subscribe to the channel, like I said. Go on Facebook, like it, view the videos, and let's keep this rolling. I hope that today was helpful and informative. And I'm going to do something now. It's, wow, almost 17 minutes, but hey, we had a couple days off. So I'm going to do something now, which I'm going to do at the end of every video. Let me know if you like it, if you've made it this far. I don't know how many of you will, but I'm going to go through and just very quickly tell you the headlines of the stories that I cover so you can keep them in mind. Started out today talking about the Ukraine. The ceasefire did not hold. Neither side is going to withdraw anything. Drones, there are new rules. Kick in the face to Amazon. Got to be able to see the drone. Can't do it at night. Can't go over 500 feet in the air. Can't go over 100 miles an hour. UFOs. There was a dude who worked at the White House, and he left, and he said, I really would like to give out the UFO files. I would like that too. That's why I mentioned that. And I know that some of the people that watch are interested in UFOs. You hippies. Just kidding. So moving on, we talked about in Turkey there was a murder, and it sparked this massive protest, and there was a really cool kind of Twitter gag or Twitter gimmick to get people to actually share their stories of harassment and abuse. I think it's a very effective way to do things. It really puts in the face of everyone, and it's a good story. I like that story. Moving on, I talked about Sri Lanka and India signing a nuclear deal, kind of butting out China. Then I talked about Copenhagen, Denmark, horrible attacks that happened, killed 2 at this free speech rally, and then the gunman was downed. We'll see how the story develops, what more information we can get. Then I talked about cybercrime. These robbers have stolen $1 billion over the past 2 years from major banks. It was over 100 banks in 30 countries, 2 years, $1 billion. Cyber robbers, crazy to me. Very interesting. Talked about Boko Haram threatening a northern Nigerian city, broiling that conflict, making it even more intense for the people over there. We'll see how that goes. I talked about South Sudan, the use of child soldiers, and I'm going to try to stay up on that conflict as well. Then I talked about a rapper for Germany who fell for a honeypot scheme, or honeypot espionage tactic. Hilarious to me. Haha. And then I talked about ISIS funding a little bit, talked about their black market arms that they're stretching out, and also mentioned that I wanted to get a little bit more of the background on some of these things, funding, try to unravel a little bit of the thread when I have time. I talked about the big story today, Egypt and ISIS. Remember, ISIS killed 21 Egyptian Christians from Libya, and then Egypt went, ham, and just has been hammering them with airstrikes. Talked a little bit about the end of, hey, ISIS, what are you doing? You're getting so many people so mad at you. How is this going to work out for you and positively? But made some speculation of, hey, do they even have like a central way that they want to do things? Nobody knows. So those are the stories for today. We are closing in, I would say, past 18 minutes, almost 20 minutes. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and go ahead, like I said, get people involved. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope this was helpful. 4th installment of 5 on It News. Have a great day.